You are listening to Crazy Karen HOA. The HOA tried to weaponize a property line. I am standing in my backyard in Edmonton, Alberta, holding a post cap in my palm like it is evidence, and Janet Foster is screaming at me from 3 feet away. "You need to stop this project right now," she says, tapping her smart watch like it is a badge. "The fence is not compliant. You are over the height limit. You are inside the setback easement, and you did not get pre-approval from the committee. You can be mad, or you can be compliant." I am a network engineer. I understand access logs and audit trails. I moved to Edmonton 6 months ago for a job with a fiber deployment firm, and I bought a house in a subdivision called Harborview Estates because it was close to my office and the custody schedule with my ex made proximity critical. My daughter visits every other weekend and 2 weeknights a week, and I needed a yard where she could play without me worrying about the rotting fence collapsing on her. The HOA here is called the Harborview Fence Compliance Association, and the name should have been a warning. They have a rule book thicker than most service-level agreements, and selective enforcement ramps up the moment you improve anything. Janet Foster is the Welcome Committee Chair, which in practice means she weaponizes move-in rules and uses her role to patrol the neighborhood looking for violations. She has red hair in a short bob, a pink cardigan that she wears like armor, a red baseball cap, and a smartwatch she taps constantly. She also carries a handheld label maker and uses it to tag materials as violations, slapping little printed labels on lumber and posts with phrases like non-compliant or pending review. No readable text, but the intent is obvious. The fence I am replacing is 30 years old. It sags in 3 places, 2 posts are rotted at the base, and 1 panel fell over during a windstorm last month. I filed the permit application with the city 2 weeks ago, hired a licensed contractor, and ordered materials. The contractor showed up this morning at 8, and by 9:30 Janet was in my driveway with a tape measure and a printed copy of the HOA covenants. She claims the fence is 6 inches too tall, even though the contractor is using the exact specs from the city permit. She claims I am building inside a setback easement, even though the survey I ordered last week shows the property line clearly and the fence is 2 feet inside my boundary. She claims I did not get pre-approval, even though I submitted the architectural review form 3 weeks ago and got no response. "Janet," I say, keeping my voice level, "I filed everything. I have the city permit. I have the survey. I have the materials list. If there is a problem with the HOA approval, I need to know what it is, because the contractor is here and the schedule is tight." She taps her watch again. "You did not wait for committee approval. That is a violation. I am issuing a stop work order right now, and if you continue, the fines start at $500 per day." She pulls out her label maker and starts tagging the fence posts with little printed labels. She does not say what the labels say, but the intent is clear. She is marking my materials as non-compliant, and she is doing it in front of the contractor. The contractor, a guy named Mike, who has been doing fence work in Edmonton for 15 years, looks at me and shrugs. If she is claiming a stop work, I need written authorization from the HOA or the city to ignore it. I cannot keep working if there is a dispute on record. Janet smiles. "Exactly. You can be mad, or you can be compliant." I take a breath. I did not raise my voice, because my proof was louder than any argument. I have the survey. I have the permit. I have the approval form submission receipt. And I have something else, something I am holding in reserve, but I am not playing that card yet. "Janet," I say, "I am going to call the management company and confirm the approval status. If there is a legitimate stop work order, I will comply. But if this is just you deciding to enforce rules that do not exist, I am going to document it. She taps her watch one more time. I will bury you in notices until you run out of printer ink. She walks away, and I pull out my phone. The management company for the Harborview Fence Compliance Association is a firm called Westridge Property Management. They handle about 20 HOAs in the Edmonton metro area, and their office is downtown. I call the main line, and after 3 transfers I get someone named Dana who handles architectural review requests. Dana, I say, I submitted an architectural review form for a fence replacement 3 weeks ago. I got no response. Now the Welcome Committee chair is claiming I did not get approval and she is threatening a stop work order. Can you confirm the status? Dana puts me on hold. 2 minutes later she comes back. I see your submission. It was approved by the board 8 days ago. The notice was sent to your address. I never got a notice, I say. She pauses. It shows as mailed. Let me check the address on file. She reads it back. It is my address, but I never received the letter. I check my mailbox every day because of the custody schedule and the constant flow of legal documents from my ex. If the HOA sent an approval notice, it never arrived. Dana, I say, can you email me a copy of the approval right now? I have a contractor on site, and the Welcome Committee chair is threatening fines. She hesitates. I can email it, but it will take a few hours to process. The office closes at 5. It is 3:15. I have one shot to get the approval letter in hand before the office closes, and if I wait for the email, Janet will use the delay to escalate. I tell Dana I will come to the office in person and pick up a printed copy. She agrees, and I hang up. Mike, I say, I am going to the management office to get the approval letter. Can you hold off until I get back? He nods. I will pack up for now. If you get the letter, call me and I will come back tomorrow morning. I grab my keys and head out. The Westridge Property Management office is 20 minutes away, and I am racing the clock. I do not know if Janet is going to escalate while I am gone, but I also know that I need the written approval in hand to shut her down. I make it to the office at 3:50. Dana is waiting at the front desk with a printed letter on Westridge letterhead. It confirms that the architectural review request for a fence replacement at my address was approved by the board on the date she mentioned, and it includes the specs I submitted. I thank her, take the letter, and drive back. When I get home, Janet is standing in my driveway. She is not alone. There is a tow truck parked on the street, and a man in a reflective vest is talking to her. The contractor's truck is still in my driveway, but Mike is gone. I get out of my car and walk over. Janet sees me and points. That truck, she says to the tow driver, is parked in violation of the HOA parking policy. It needs to be removed immediately. The tow driver looks at me. Is this your truck? No, I say. It is the contractor's truck. He is working on my fence replacement. And he will be back tomorrow morning. The truck is parked in my driveway. On my property. It is not blocking anything. Janet taps her watch. The HOA parking policy prohibits commercial vehicles from being parked in driveways overnight. It is in the covenants. You can be mad, or you can be compliant. I pull out the approval letter and hold it up. Janet, the fence replacement is approved. I have the letter from the management company. The contractor is coming back tomorrow. The truck is parked legally on my property. She does not look at the letter. The parking policy is separate from the architectural review. The truck is in violation. The tow driver looks at the truck, then at me, then at Janet. "Ma'am," he says, "I need written authorization from the HOA to tow a vehicle from private property. Do you have a board resolution or a signed order?" Janet hesitates. "I am the Welcome Committee Chair. I have the authority to enforce parking violations." The tow driver shakes his head. "I need a signed order from the board or the management company. Without that, I cannot tow the truck. It is a liability issue." Janet's face goes red. She taps her watch again, harder this time. "Fine. I will get the authorization, but the truck is in violation, and the fines are going to stack up." The tow driver gets back in his truck and drives away. Janet glares at me, then walks to her car and leaves. I stand in my driveway holding the approval letter, and I realize two things. First, Janet is not just enforcing rules, she is weaponizing every tool she has access to, including vendors and management company procedures, to shut down my project. Second, she is making mistakes. The tow vendor refused to act without proper authorization, and that tells me Janet is overstepping her actual authority. I call Mike and tell him what happened. He agrees to come back in the morning, and he says he will park on the street instead of the driveway to avoid another tow threat. That night, I sit down and start documenting everything. I have the approval letter, I have the survey, I have the permit. I also have something Janet does not know about. 2 weeks ago, after the first round of complaints from Janet about neighborhood violations, I installed a security camera system. It covers the backyard, the driveway, and the front yard. The footage is time-stamped and stored on a local server I set up in my home office. I am a network engineer. I know how to build audit trails. I pull up the footage from this morning. At 9:30, Janet walks into my backyard and starts taking photos of the fence line. She is not just documenting the work. She is staging the photos. She moves closer to the string line, angles the camera to make the fence layout look worse, and takes multiple shots from different angles. At one point, she picks up one of the survey stakes and moves it 6 inches to the left, then takes another photo. She moved the survey stake. She physically altered the property line marker to make my fence placement look non-compliant, and she did it on camera. I save the footage to an external drive and make 2 backup copies. One goes in my safe, one goes in my car. I also export the relevant clips and timestamp them. The next morning, Mike shows up at 7:30. He parks on the street and starts unloading materials. By 8, the first post hole is dug. By 9, Janet is back. She walks up with a clipboard and a camera. "You did not stop work," she says. "That is a violation. The fines are now accruing at $500 per day, starting yesterday." "Janet," I say, "I have the approval letter. The work is permitted. You do not have the authority to issue a stop work order." She taps her watch. "I have the authority to enforce compliance. The fence is non-compliant because you moved the survey stakes." I stare at her. "I moved the survey stakes?" She nods. "I have photographic evidence. You altered the property line markers to make the fence fit inside the setback easement. That is fraud, and I am reporting it to the board and the city." She holds up her phone and shows me a photo. It is one of the shots she took yesterday. The survey stake is in the wrong position, 6 inches off from where the surveyor placed it. "Janet," I say, "I did not move the stakes. The surveyor placed them 2 weeks ago, and they have not been touched." She smiles. The photo says otherwise. "I am submitting this to the board tonight. You are going to be facing fines, a forced removal of the fence, and possible legal action from the HOA. She walks away, and Mike looks at me. "Do you want me to keep going?" I nod. "Keep going. I have the footage. She moved the stakes, not me." Mike shrugs and goes back to work. That afternoon, I get an email from Westridge Property Management. It is a notice of violation. The email states that the HOA board has received a complaint regarding my fence project and that photographic evidence shows I altered property line markers. The notice states that I have 7 days to respond in writing, and that if I do not respond, the HOA will proceed with enforcement action, including fines, forced removal, and a lien against the property. I print the email and add it to my file. Then I call the management company and ask to schedule a hearing. Dana tells me the next board meeting is in 10 days, and that I can submit a written response or appear in person. I tell her I will appear in person. I also call a local attorney who specializes in HOA disputes. Her name is Claire, and she was recommended by a colleague at work. I explain the situation, and she asks me to send her all the documents I have. I send her the approval letter, the survey, the permit, the violation notice, and the security camera footage showing Janet moving the stakes. Claire calls me back an hour later. "This is a clear case of harassment and bad faith enforcement," she says. "The footage showing her moving the stakes is going to end this fight. But you need to be strategic about how you deploy it. If you show it too early, she will have time to spin a counter-narrative. If you wait until the hearing, you can present it as evidence and force the board to respond on the record." If you are enjoying this story, hit the like button and subscribe for more HOA nightmare tales. I agree to hold the footage until the hearing. In the meantime, I keep building the fence. Mike finishes the post holes by the end of the week, and we start setting the posts. Janet shows up every other day with her clipboard and her label maker, tagging materials and taking photos. Each time, she repeats her catchphrase: "You can be mad, or you can be compliant." I do not engage. I document every visit, every photo she takes, every label she sticks on the fence posts. I also check the survey stakes every morning, and twice I find them moved. Each time, the security camera footage shows Janet walking into my backyard at night and adjusting the stakes. She is building a false record, and she does not know I am capturing every move. 1 week before the hearing, I get another email from Westridge. This one is from the board president, a man named Greg. The email states that the board has reviewed the complaint and the photographic evidence, and that they are scheduling an emergency hearing to address the violation. The email also states that if I do not comply with the stop work order, the HOA will pursue immediate legal action, including an injunction and a lien. I forward the email to Claire. She calls me back within 10 minutes. "This is escalating fast," she says. "They are using emergency procedures to bypass normal hearing timelines." That tells me Janet is putting pressure on the board, and they are not doing their due diligence. You need to be ready to present your case clearly and decisively. Bring the footage, bring the survey, bring the permit, and bring the approval letter. Do not let them control the narrative. The night before the hearing, I get a knock on my door. It is 9:30, and I am not expecting anyone. I look through the peephole and see Janet standing on my porch. She is holding a flashlight and her clipboard. I open the door. "Janet, what are you doing here?" She shines the flashlight past me into the hallway. "I am conducting an inspection." The HOA has the right to inspect properties for compliance violations, and I have reason to believe you are storing non-compliant materials inside your garage. "Janet, I say, you do not have the right to enter my property without permission. If the HOA wants to conduct an inspection, They need to provide written notice and schedule a time. She taps her watch. I am the Welcome Committee Chair. I have the authority to enforce compliance. You can let me in, or I can report you for obstruction. I pull out my phone and start recording. Janet, I am not letting you in. If you want to conduct an inspection, you need to go through the proper channels. Right now, you are trespassing. She glares at me, then turns and walks away. I watch her get in her car and drive off. Then I call Claire and tell her what happened. Claire is furious. That is trespassing, harassment, and possibly stalking, she says. You need to file a police report. The hearing is tomorrow, and this is going to strengthen your case. She is out of control, and the board needs to know about it. I call the non-emergency police line and file a report. The officer who takes the report asks if I want to press charges. I tell him I want the incident documented, and that I will decide about charges after the HOA hearing. He gives me a case number and tells me to call back if Janet shows up again. The next morning, I drive to the Westridge Property Management office. The hearing is scheduled for 10, and I arrive at 9:30. Claire is already there, and she has printed copies of all the documents we discussed. She also has a USB drive with the security camera footage. The hearing takes place in a small conference room on the second floor. The board is seated at one end of the table. Greg, the president, 2 other board members, and Dana from the management company. Janet is sitting in a chair along the wall, and she has her clipboard and a folder of photos. Greg calls the meeting to order and reads the complaint. He states that the HOA has received a report that I altered property line markers to allow a non-compliant fence installation, and that I failed to comply with a stop work order. He asks Janet to present her evidence. Janet stands up and walks to the table. She spreads out a series of printed photos showing the fence line, the survey stakes, and the work in progress. She points to one photo and says, "This shows the survey stake in the wrong position." The stake was moved after the surveyor left, and it was moved by the homeowner to allow the fence to fit inside the setback easement. This is fraud, and it is a violation of the HOA covenants. Greg looks at me. Do you have a response? I nod. Yes. I did not move the survey stakes. I have evidence that proves it. Janet interrupts. He is lying. I have photographic evidence. Greg holds up his hand. Let him speak. Claire stands up. My client has security camera footage that shows the survey stakes were moved, but not by him. The footage shows Janet Foster entering his property on multiple occasions and physically altering the position of the stakes. We have time-stamped video that contradicts her photos. The room goes silent. Greg looks at Janet. Is this true? Janet taps her watch. I was conducting inspections. I have the authority to inspect properties for compliance. Claire pulls out the USB drive and hands it to Dana. This footage shows Janet Foster moving the survey stakes on 3 separate occasions. The timestamps match the dates of her alleged inspections. The footage also shows her taking staged photos and using a label maker to tag materials as non-compliant without any board authorization. Dana plugs the USB drive into a laptop and pulls up the footage on a projector screen. The first clip shows Janet walking into my backyard, crouching next to a survey stake and moving it 6 inches to the left. The timestamp is clear. The second clip shows her doing the same thing 3 days later. The third clip shows her taking photos with her phone from multiple angles, including shots where she deliberately positions herself to make the fence line look worse. Greg watches the clips in silence. Then he looks at Janet. Did you move the survey stakes? Janet's face goes red. I was verifying the property line. The homeowner was not cooperating, and I needed to confirm the measurements. Claire shakes her head. Verifying the property line is not the same as moving the stakes. You altered evidence to support a false claim of fraud. That is not enforcement. That is harassment. Greg looks at the other board members. One of them, a woman named Linda, speaks up. If Janet moved the stakes, then the photos she submitted are not reliable evidence. We cannot proceed with enforcement based on altered documentation. Janet stands up. This is ridiculous. The homeowner is non-compliant. The fence is too tall, it is inside the setback easement, and he did not get proper approval. I pull out the approval letter and slide it across the table. I got approval 8 days before the work started. The letter was mailed, but I never received it. I went to the management office and picked up a copy in person. The fence is within the city permit specs, and the survey shows it is 2 feet inside my property line. Janet has been fabricating violations to justify her harassment. Greg picks up the letter and reads it. Then he looks at Dana. Is this approval letter valid? Dana nods. Yes. The architectural review was approved by the board, and the notice was mailed to the homeowner's address. If he did not receive it, that is a mail issue, not a compliance issue. Greg looks at Janet. You told me he did not have approval. Janet taps her watch. The approval was conditional. He did not meet the conditions. Claire leans forward. What conditions? Janet hesitates. She does not have an answer. Greg sighs. Janet, I am going to ask you to step outside while the board discusses this. Janet stands up, grabs her folder, and walks out. The door closes behind her. Greg looks at me. I apologize for this situation. It is clear that Janet overstepped her authority and made false claims. The board is going to dismiss the violation notice, and we will reimburse any filing fees or legal costs you incurred. I also want to address the harassment issue. If Janet has been entering your property without permission, that is a separate matter, and you have the right to pursue legal action. Claire nods. My client filed a police report last night after Janet attempted to enter his home for an unauthorized inspection. We are asking the board to formally bar Janet from entering his property, and we are requesting that the HOA cover his legal fees as part of the resolution. Greg looks at the other board members. Linda nods. The third board member, a man named Tom, also nods. Greg looks at me. We agree. The HOA will cover your filing fees to end this fight, and we will issue a formal trespass notice to Janet Foster barring her from your property. If she violates the notice, you can call the police and have her arrested. I thank him, and the hearing ends. Outside in the hallway, Janet is waiting. She sees me and walks over. This is not over, she says. I will bury you in notices until you run out of printer ink. I pull out my phone and show her the police report. Janet, you are trespassed from my property. If you come back, I will have you arrested. The board just dismissed the violation notice, and they are covering my legal fees. You lost. Her face goes white. She taps her watch one more time, but she does not say anything. She walks away, and I do not see her again. The fence is finished 2 weeks later. Mike does a clean job, and the contractor invoice is paid in full by the HOA as part of the settlement. The survey stakes stay in place, and I keep the security camera footage backed up in 3 locations. 1 month after the hearing, I get an email from Greg. He tells me that Janet Foster has resigned from the welcome committee, and that the board is reviewing their enforcement procedures to prevent similar incidents in the future. He also tells me that the HOA is implementing a new policy requiring written board authorization for any property inspections, and that all enforcement actions must go through the management company before being communicated to homeowners. I forward the email to Claire, and she calls me back. "You won," she says. "You forced accountability, you protected your rights, and you made the HOA pay for their mistake. That is a clean outcome." I thank her and hang up. Then I walk out to the backyard and look at the fence. It is straight, it is solid, and it is exactly where it should be. My daughter visits that weekend, and she runs around the yard without me worrying about rotting posts or collapsing panels. 2 months later, I am at the grocery store near my house. I am in the produce section, and I see Janet 2 aisles over. She sees me at the same time. She turns and walks the other way. I do not follow her. I finish my shopping and leave. A week after that, I get a call from a reporter at a local news station. Her name is Amy, and she tells me she is working on a story about HOA abuse in Edmonton. She heard about my case from a tip-line staffer who told her what documentation matters, and she wants to interview me. I agree to the interview. Amy comes to my house with a cameraman, and we sit in the backyard. I show her the fence, I show her the survey stakes, and I show her the security camera footage of Janet moving the stakes. Amy asks me about the hearing, the trespass notice, and the settlement. I tell her the whole story. The segment airs 2 weeks later. It is a 5-minute piece on the evening news, and it includes footage of my backyard, clips from the security camera, and an interview with Claire about HOA enforcement abuse. The station does not name Janet directly, but they refer to her as a former HOA committee chair who resigned after a dispute. The segment ends with a warning to homeowners about documenting violations and knowing their rights. The day after the segment airs, I get a call from Greg. He tells me the HOA board received over 50 emails from residents asking about enforcement procedures, and that the board is scheduling a special meeting to review the rulebook and update the covenants. He also tells me that several residents have filed complaints about selective enforcement, and that the board is bringing in an outside consultant to audit the association's practices. I thank him and hang up. Then I open my laptop and pull up the access logs for the HOA's electronic gate system. I am a network engineer. I know how to read audit trails. The logs show that Janet had admin access to the gate system, and that she used it to open the gate for vendors and contractors without proper authorization. The logs also show repeated gate access failures tied to her admin account, including failed attempts to open the gate during times when she was supposedly conducting inspections. I export the logs and save them to the same external drive where I keep the security camera footage. I do not know if I will ever need them, but I have learned that documentation is power, and that audit trails are the best defense against people who weaponize authority. 3 months after the hearing, I am sitting in my backyard with my daughter. She is playing on the grass, and I am reading a book. The fence is holding up perfectly. The survey stakes are still in place. The security cameras are still recording. My phone buzzes. It is a text from Claire. She tells me that the HOA just sent her a final settlement letter confirming that all fines have been waived, all legal fees have been reimbursed, and that the trespass notice against Janet Foster is permanent. She also tells me that Janet is no longer listed on the HOA website as a committee member, and that the Welcome Committee has been dissolved pending a policy review. I text back a thank you, and I put the phone down. Then I look at the fence one more time. It is straight. It is solid. And it is exactly where it should be. 1 week later, I am pulling into my driveway after work, and I see a security guard standing near the clubhouse door at the end of the block. He is wearing a reflective vest and holding a clipboard. I do not recognize him, and I wonder if the HOA hired extra security after the news segment. I park and walk over. The guard tells me his name is Kevin, and that he was hired by the management company to monitor the common areas and enforce parking rules. He also tells me that he has been instructed to document any violations and report them directly to the management company, bypassing the committee chairs. I ask him if he has seen Janet around the neighborhood. He tells me she still lives here, but that she has not been involved in any HOA activities since the hearing. He also tells me that the board issued a written notice to all committee chairs reminding them that they do not have authority to enter private property without permission, and that all enforcement actions must be documented and approved by the management company before being communicated to homeowners. I thank Kevin and walk back to my house. I feel like I can breathe again. The fence is done. The harassment has stopped. And the HOA is finally being held accountable. That night, I sit down at my laptop and write an email to Amy, the reporter who covered my story. I tell her about the settlement, the policy changes, and the new security protocols. I also tell her that the HOA is now under audit, and that several residents have filed complaints about selective enforcement. I ask her if she wants to do a follow-up story. Amy writes back the next morning. She tells me she is working on a larger investigation into HOA abuse across Alberta, and that my case is one of several she is tracking. She asks me if I would be willing to participate in a panel discussion with other homeowners who have faced similar issues. I agree. The panel discussion takes place 2 months later at a community center in Edmonton. There are about 50 people in the audience, and the panel includes 4 homeowners, a lawyer, and a representative from the provincial government. We talk about HOA enforcement abuse, selective targeting, and the legal tools homeowners have to fight back. I tell my story, and I show the security camera footage on a big screen. The audience is silent when the clip of Janet moving the survey stakes plays. When the clip ends, several people stand up and applaud. After the panel, a woman approaches me. She tells me her name is Sarah, and that she is dealing with a similar situation in her neighborhood. Her HOA is targeting her over a shed she built in her backyard, and the committee chair is threatening fines and forced removal. She asks me if I have any advice. I tell her to document everything. I tell her to install security cameras. I tell her to get a lawyer early, before the situation escalates, and I tell her to never back down when the evidence is on her side. Sarah thanks me and walks away. I stay for another hour talking to other homeowners and answering questions. By the time I leave, I feel like I have turned a personal nightmare into something that might help other people. 6 months after the hearing, I get a letter in the mail from Westridge Property Management. The letter states that the HOA audit is complete and that the board has adopted a new set of enforcement procedures. The letter also states that the Harborview Fence Compliance Association is being merged with another HOA in the area to reduce costs and improve governance. The new association will have a professional management team, and all enforcement actions will require board approval and written documentation. I file the letter in my folder, and I close the case. 1 year after the hearing, I am sitting in my backyard with my daughter again. The fence is still solid. The survey stakes are still in place. And the security cameras are still recording. My daughter is older now, and she asks me why I have so many cameras. I tell her that sometimes people try to take advantage of you, and that the best way to protect yourself is to document everything. I tell her that standing up for yourself is not always easy, but that it is always worth it when the evidence is on your side. She nods and goes back to playing. I sit back in my chair and look at the fence one more time. It is straight. It is solid. And it is exactly where it should be. Thanks for watching, and I will catch you in the next one.